You're ready to take that plunge. You've been thinking about it, dreaming about it. This is great. Having. Just want to see what else I can get you to do. I was going to do something sexual. I just wanted to see what you do. I was like, no. I didn't know the joke. Anyway, you're thinking about your first vintage guitar. We all have. I've gone down that rabbit hole a few times. I have a few times. I have a few. There's one sitting behind us somewhere.
I was going to say successfully and maybe less successfully.
Yeah, but okay, so just prepare before you jump into this. So first things first. Okay, so you're ready to get your vintage guitar. You've saved up your money. You've got $500 ready to go. I'm kidding. Let's just multiply that by...
Tesco it is. Yes.
God, let's multiply that by a lot. So let's just say you have $10,000 and up. And you want to buy a vintage guitar. First things first, prepare to be...
maybe disappointed a little bit.
Yeah, that's going to be your first thing. Don't expect the heavens to open up in the clouds and the rain to shine down upon you. It is not all daffodils and Lucky Charms on the way to this vintage glory. It's a tricky little road, right? It's tough.
It is tough.
You and I played a lot of vintage guitars.
We have played our share.
I have played some vintage guitars that are great.
I mean, occasionally the heavens do open up, but that's the exception, I would say.
I played most vintage guitars I've played have been good.
Yeah.
Some have been okay,
right?
And a few have been downright terrible.
Yes.
And in general, when I hear vintage guitar, I'm like, it's an old guitar. Let's go qualify it.
Right.
Let's get into it. Let's see. So first steps first. Where are you buying the guitar from?
Right.
That's a big part of the deal. You don't want to just be, if you gotta be careful where you're buying from. There are a lot of forgeries out there. There's lots of guitars that have not been taken care of at all, and they might still be asking the moon for it.
Top dollar, yeah.
Top dollar. So you do have to be careful. You have to trust who you're buying it from. But I say that with a strange caveat too, because a lot of people, well, I bought it from this dealer and it wasn't perfect. It's a vintage guitar.
It's not gonna be perfect, right? It's just not.
And like that's what you were talking about earlier, like before we started rolling, like what do you expect your vintage guitar to do? What do you expect your shop to do?
Right.
Do you want them to level the frets? Do you want them to refret it? Do you want them to take it all apart and change out and clean the pots and fix the pots? Right? Careful.
I mean, don't buy a vintage Jaguar and think you're going to be shredding up at the 15th fret. You're not. It's going to fret out. It's going to buzz. I mean, that's just... Now, we're not saying that you can't buy that vintage guitar and make it amazing and have it refretted and do things to it. But then you got to weigh out, are you affecting the value? How much money do you want to put in on top of that initial, price to play the game just to have something vintage? You got to weigh out all those things. And maybe you end up with a vintage guitar that is fantastic, that is your dream come true. But maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, the way it works in the perfect storm is if you can find a vintage piece, obviously at an affordable price. Right. You're not going to find that on Reverb. You're not going to find that at a guitar shop usually. You're going to find that through a friend or through somebody who passes away. Like we often find vintage pieces through people that unfortunately have met their end on this time on earth and have gone to the heavens, and their families might contact us, or the lawyers that are involved in the estates might contact us. And oftentimes we'll go there and it's a bunch of Yamahas or Behringers and things that aren't... Every once in a while you see a stack of Gibson cases and Martin cases and Fenders and cool, oh. And
sometimes those are the great ones because those are the ones that were being played. A player had them, he kept them up, he had them set up, he had whatever needed to be done to them. That's sometimes when you find great guitars. And sometimes those are player-grade guitars, right? They've had a refin done, they've been refretted multiple times, whatever it is.
And we've talked about that before. That's a great way to get a vintage guitar is get a refin at a good price. It's not going to have the value and that panache of the true vintage that you might think you want, but it doesn't really matter because if you're going to play the guitar. If you're buying this as a commodity to collect and trade in the future, you do have to be careful about that aspect, I think. But I buy guitars to play them.
Yes.
And then maybe I'll sell them. Let's go into things that you can do to actually get a good vintage guitar. There is a journey there. So if you can, here's the most important part.
Have $1 million. No.
No, play the guitar.
Oh, yeah.
I know you can actually get your hands on the guitar. And this is an old-fashioned thing from the 90s. in the early 2000s, back when people would travel to these guitars. Joe Bonamassa can do it. He flies around and does it, but he's buying a different level guitar than all of us. Right. I'm like, man, like I'm going to get that vintage Squire.
Does he not have them all yet?
I think he has all of them now at this point.
It's like Pokemon with Joe Bonamassa. Catch them all.
Gosh, don't get me started. No. I'm going to Nerdville one day. I'm going to Nerdville.
One day Joe's going to invite us, maybe. No, he probably won't.
No, maybe.
He could.
Maybe. I mean, like, because when he's like, I've gone through every possible guest possible, I need someone to help cook my food. You guys can come out and cook our food because you look like you guys like to eat.
You guys are amusing.
No, play the guitar. Get your hands on the guitar. Yep. Like work through it. Like when I buy vintage guitars of a certain value, not always, but I'm taking the guitar apart. Sure. As well. Like I'll take it apart on the person's coffee table, as I've said. I have my tools. I get my gloves on if I need those. Make everybody feel happy about it. But I'm going to get in there. I don't like taking necks off that much because I do. But I have to do it on a vintage piece, just to see what's happening behind the scenes.
And when you take that guitar apart, if you love that guitar, nothing is a deal breaker. But you have to determine what is the reasonable price for it. Like, let's say you take it apart, some things aren't original, but you love the guitar. You know, if you're buying it to play, don't let that crush the whole thing for you or sour it for you. Just know,
that affects the price.
Yeah, adjust the price accordingly.
And the seller should adjust it there as well. And if they're not willing to, they're an unscrupulous seller.
Sure. Because
then they've just been learned that their guitar is not 100% original. They should be aware that this is not worth the value that they thought it was worth.
And don't even, I usually assume they did not know because it's so easy to miss things on vintage guitars or to not know, hey, this pickup wasn't original or...
I've missed things.
We absolutely have missed things before.
It's like, fortunately, that's why we have a team of people that will sort of like check each other out and like, oh, wait, did you see that? I'm like, ooh, whoops.
Yeah, and if, if a customer points that out, we're 1,000% willing to make it right. We usually try to bend over backwards to make that.
That hasn't happened, right. Fortunately, before it's gone out to the world from us. It's have an expert go with you if you can possibly do that too. Don't just rely on your Googling resources 100% alone. Have someone who's had some experience on the instruments, who knows like what this guitar might need to make it a playable instrument as well. Because a refret is going to be common for almost any vintage Fender. Yeah. I don't do that because I can play lightly. I'm a very light player. I'm sort of a baby.
It's little
a dainty plays. I have little angel fingers.
Dainty fingers. Yeah, they're so dainty.
They're kind of, they're sort of monstrously big, but they're dainty.
They're dainty.
Monstrously big. That made me happy. They're large, but they're skinny and somewhat veiny too. Sometimes it's kind of neat. Got some veins down there. I would not look good in a dress.
No.
That's the one telltale. Like with me there, it's like. I wish I had those pictures of me in high school though. That's cool. Senior prom. A lot of kind marks. We had a great time. Our dates didn't even know. We showed up in dresses and just totally tricked our two little dates there. They loved it though. We had a great time.
There you go.
Senior prom at North Carolina School of the Arts. What are you going to do? Totally different. I'll find pictures somewhere.
Thank God they're out there.
I'm so glad the internet didn't exist back then. Oh, God, gross. But, so you can actually definitely find one, but it's like, expectations versus reality. That's the main thing. Make sure you have someone or you're an expert yourself if you can physically go there and check it out. Buy from a reputable source. Like you can't go wrong buying from Carter's or Gruhn's. Right. I mean, we're pretty darn good about it too. Any like Wildwood, when they have vintage stuff, it's always been spec'd out great and like it's set up well. It's most of the good shops have a great track record of it. But just measure your expectations. We start off like prepare to be disappointed, especially when you're buying these student model guitars like Mustangs and Les Paul Juniors. And like these were student guitars.
I think people forget that.
Like even though it's a 1959 or 58 or something, it was built for kids. Like you're buying like the 1959 version of the Squire Classic Vibe.
Right. It's true.
That's what it is. And
it's a really good point.
You're paying $10,000 for it. And like now people one day might be paying that for these, the Japanese Strats from the 80s.
It's possible.
Or some we had one of our customers, not through us, he bought it through a place up in Brooklyn, but I think he paid $5,000 for was it a 1982?
I don't remember. It was early 80s, yeah.
I can't remember what year that was, but it was one that was built in the original factory, and he just really wanted that. And I was like, man, this is way too expensive. There weren't any other ones that were clean out there, but that's
like, I don't care.
He's like, I want. I'm like, are you sure? I will help you get it. And he's like, who knows? It's weird. The fact that there's $10,000 1971 Strats out there in reverb is mind-boggling to me.
Well, the guy that bought the 80s, I mean, and he was thrilled with it, you know?
Thrilled with it.
And he knew that a lot of it was nostalgia. And that's fine as long as you know that. You don't have you wake up and have this crazy realization.
Yeah, if you were born in 1954 and you have the wherewithal to buy a 54 Strat, be aware that it's a 54 Strat.
Yeah.
It's not going to play like a 54 Strat custom shop.
No.
Not anywhere in the same ballpark. You're like, oh, the mat is so much better. It's really not going to be better, probably. It's going to play worse.
Is it going to have like cool mojo and like an awesome vibe? And could it sound fantastic? Sure.
Yeah, that 64 Strat. Like, we've had a bunch of vintage ones, but the Bootlegger's Flame, that's the one I always go back to. That neck pickup was
there was something magical
dynamite. The other pickups are okay.
Yeah.
And it was a tough guitar to play, but that neck was amazing, and the neck pickup was amazing.
You could make that guitar into an amazing, you know what I mean? Like,
and it has been made into an amazing guitar. I've stayed in touch with who has it. It's circulated a few times since we sold it.
I knew it had
to
a
a gentleman in Seattle. Then he sold it to, I think, Emerald City.
Yep.
Then I think there, and then Emerald City sold it again. And then whoever got it then got it refretted, and it looks awesome. I think they cleaned the wiring a bit more too. It's
sweet.
That guitar is one of the greats out there, and it's expensive, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, it's beat to living tar. It has the history from sinning to Christianity to the country, all that stuff, and now it's like having a second life.
Which is, that is really cool.
That's the joy of vintage guitars. Like, when you find it, and you can put the money, and it takes money, it takes time. That's
But that what you just said, that's why we get sort of giddy and geek out over it. That is what's cool about vintage guitars, right? Seeing this guitar that's had this life and it's traveled and now it has a new life. That is awesome.
It is. And that's why we do it. I think
that's why we do it. That's why we chase it, I guess.
That's why when I still have a chance to get one, sometimes it pulls me in. And every once in a while it's there and the poison gets me. And every once in a while it's just an old guitar. It's like, all right, I gotta have that. The custom shop does it to me almost every day, though. They're like, oh, here's 5 guitars.
They're like, oh God, yeah.
I really want to keep that one, but I can't do that. So it happens. So that's what tell us about your journeys, your experiences with them. It's I've had a lot of fun with it in my life. I had some heartbreak, but but that's part of the deal. It's like dating and getting married and having a family. Just not quite as expensive. So, let us know your journeys with vintage pieces and your thrills, your joys, your losses, and your mistakes when you sold something you definitely shouldn't have. Oh God, so many horror stories on that. But mainly your journey of buying a vintage piece. I'm curious, and share with our friends out there too, on the comments, because it really helps people sometimes.
It does. I think it does.
And that's the idea. Even when you guys started dialoguing there, and we don't even get to see it initially, it's we'll see it a few weeks later, a month later maybe. It's amazing. You guys can really help each other out, and again, friendships develop too.
Crazy.
That's it. I'm done.
Such a happy, positive end.
It is a happy, positive end, and then positively.
Makes me warm and fuzzy. All right, hit like and subscribe. Click that bell so you don't miss videos in the future. We appreciate you hanging out with us. We'll see you next time.